I'm Anna.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching Rezero, The Frozen Bond. I think this is another OVA. Last OVA, I was pleasantly surprised,
We had some happy times.
Yeah, and usually with OVAs that are, that don't have too much conflict in them, they happen in series where me watching the OVA doesn't really feel like it was necessary to watch.
Something.
Yeah,
maybe?
or add something, but God, that it helped my heart so much watching last OVA because it was so out of the normal that I know this show to be. So it definitely showed me how well the characters can interact with each other when there aren't horrifying things happening to them.
I also found it very curious that where we believe it fits in the timeline, that through our viewing experience of ReZero Season 1, it wasn't in there and that we watched it as an OVA. But where it is in the timeline, I am so curious about what that would have done to us, the viewer, to have seen that and then gone into some of the other events.
Yeah. Also, speaking of timeline, if this last OVA did happen somewhere around the halfway point, is this going to be taking place after Season 1? And if so, more happiness? I don't know. Ready?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, that was ReZero, The Frozen Bond. I am so glad that we watched the OVAs in the correct order.
True. I mean, if we hadn't realized there was an after credit to this one, then maybe it would not have.
I don't know. We had
the viewing experience.
We had a sequence of her looking out the window, in present time.
That's true. That was included.
And I'm also glad.
But that could have been cool, because then we would have been like, why is there a bunch of sculptures outside of this window too? And then we would have gotten the episode explaining how that came to be.
That's true. But I loved it so much. Because what last OVA gave me, like that meant a lot for my mental and for my morale, because, a lot of tragic things happen in this series. But very early on in ReZero, I want to say, like, within the first 3 episodes, maybe 4, one of the things I was most captivated about was how big and interesting this world seems to be. And all of the different intricacies and like spirits and how they interact with people, and the idea that Amelia, was an elf, and how she was so nervous telling that to Subaru. Like, it just made me have the desire to see more about the world. And throughout the story, I feel like this OVA was the most going in that direction since those episodes. And it's something that I think they do so well, and it's so interesting to me. It's awesome.
It's probably because very early on in the story, the focus was, I think what happened in Season 1 is that through our main character, through Subaru, our focus was very heavy on Amelia at the beginning. And then around episode 13, around the midway point, the focus of Subaru was much more on himself and how he was appearing to Amelia. It was much more selfish and less selfless and less like focused on, this is the person in front of me, this is what she's wanting from me, and much more like, what can I be doing to make her happy, or I'm gonna assume what she wants, and just like much more in his head and focused on himself and how he could, go about things in this world and go about making Amelia happy. And so I think that because of that, of course, since we're following the main character Subaru,
it's his story.
And the focus is much less on, because I don't think it would have worked if the viewer, us, knew exactly what Amelia wanted or felt during that time, that we were getting so heavily focused on Subaru's mental.
Yeah.
Because we needed to be so immersed into his mental and so understanding of what he was doing and so concerned of what was going on with him, that when we get those moments of misunderstanding or distance with Amelia during that time, the viewer, we're not in a place of having full understanding anymore, full grasp anymore of this character that we were starting to maybe understand a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Subaru has now actually distanced himself, even though that's the opposite of what he wants.
Yeah. I'm just kind of dumbfounded that it's like, wow, I could watch an entire series. Like, the entire arc of Subaru and character of Subaru is so interesting and compelling, and it's so mind-blowing to go on the ride that we have with him and to feel the things that we have through him. But because of that, like, you'd think that if that's what the main story is, that they are adding that into the story to compensate for something like within that world, that there needs to be that added layer of he came from another world, he has this ability to, start over every time that he dies. Like, you'd think that would be like compensating for a normal world or like a flat world, but it's the furthest thing from the case. Like, I'm dumbfounded that I could watch an entire show or series about things that take place out in the world that have nothing to do with Subaru, and have everything to do with Amelia or Puck or the fucking Meliquera. Like, I was like, oh my, like, I was so captivated.
It has a really great effect on us for like reminding ourselves that Subaru was never fated to be in this world necessarily.
Yeah.
It was the witch's will to bring Subaru into this world. And he's in almost a similar situation to Puck. There's a lot of parallels and similarities to their situations and also their relationship and care and how they choose to act in this world for Amelia. It's incredibly interesting to like remind us that this world existed and was interesting before Subaru even got here.
Yes.
And Subaru, at some points in time, had this feeling that the main character energy, I'm the only one that can save her, I'm the only one that can fix things, but that might not necessarily have been the truth.
Yeah. I really liked, like, so I would consider this, it's even hard to consider it as just an OVA. It was like a movie almost, but there were so many like aesthetic choices that I absolutely loved. Like in Amelia's little house, I loved how it looked in there.
Oh, I agree.
Early on, like, she was walking out the door, and to like close the door behind her, she like moved her hips to close it with her butt, and I was like, oh my god, that's great. Like, it's just like those little details I'm obsessed with. And I definitely want to start talking about, like, I guess, lore stuff and witch ideas, but a little bit later in the discussion,
Okay.
just to hit some like topical, like, surface things first that I want to talk about. What do you think of like the interactions with the village?
So at this very start of this OVA, I definitely still had a lot of questions, which is like perfectly valid for a viewing experience. You can have questions.
Yeah.
And there can be things that are left unanswered for a while. So like one of them was definitely trying to understand Amelia's relationship with this village, but also like her relationship with Puck at the very beginning. Like, is there a contract? Is there not a contract? Is she cold? Is she not cold?
Yeah.
So I was like, her thighs are out, so she must have a contract. That's what my brain was saying.
Yeah.
I was like, those thighs are, she's probably shivering. But just the village, I think it was nice if you think of the two OVAs together, to see that relationship with a village of people who, because of Subaru and his involvement and his having influence in her life, she's now able to create some amount of relationship with that village and be able to kind of cure any ideas of fear that they might have toward her. And in this, we get Puck as a character that is not supposed to interfere too much in her life, therefore isn't going to overly interfere in her relations with the village, and is just going to leave things up to, like, you do what you want to do, which is a very different approach to how Subaru did things for most of season 1, which is like, yeah, you're gonna do what you want to do, but I'm also gonna do things.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get those two OVAs both having experiences with villages that are scared of her or wary of her because of how she looks. And also, she still has all of the same emotions and feelings. It's not like because she experienced it once, it means that the next time she experiences it, it'll be easier or better. I
Yeah.
mean, we saw her react to the name Satella in the capital earlier in season one. Like, we know that this is still very raw. We have that, like, waking up scene after she went to the village to try to get them to leave and none of them would listen to her. Like, we know that this is still a reoccurring, very raw injury to her
Yeah.
heart. Like, this is not something that just like she is able to like build up actual walls to and not feel anything.
I think this is okay. A couple things in response to that. This is the moment that I think this OVA, I went from really liking Amelia as a character to like falling in love with her as a character. This added so much for me in terms of just like perspective
Mm-hmm.
of her. And the reason I asked the question about the village was exactly what you were getting at. I like that's what I appreciate most of watching the OVAs in this order and one right after another. The comparisons of the village and their response to her, but also like like Amelia's response to how Subaru has handled things in the village and how different of an approach he has. Obviously, he doesn't come with the massive baggage that is his appearance looking that of the witch, but like the things that he's trying to do and interactions he's trying to have with the villagers and their kids, like that like juxtaposed to Amelia walking up and the kids playing and then running away.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the polar opposite of anything Amelia's ever experienced before coming through the face of Subaru.
I
It's
think
so cool.
the kids of the current village summed it up perfectly of what Subaru's presence has done for the ability of the last OVA to even exist.
Yeah.
The kids' response when Subaru's like, "Hey, can she travel with you?" at the very end of season 1 is like, "We see you with Subaru, and we see you smiling, and we see you having fun with him, and we like Subaru."
Yeah.
And so it's because Subaru has like he came here. Yes, he has this like return by death, but he also has just like this really great charisma and
Mhm.
like people person. He is really great at connecting with people, being believed by people, being trusted by people, though it's sometimes I'm like, I would think they'd be incredibly suspicious of you, but okay. And
He has this extroverted charisma and air to him.
and he can use that without too interfering too much, just by existing in Amelia's life, just by being her knight,
Yeah.
is just by him being himself. That is really what he can do for her, is just be a presence by her side that is just acting how he normally would to the people around him. And it will also affect how people see her as being someone who's next to him,
Yeah.
someone who's friends with him. Because I feel like if you see a really nice person, you meet a really nice person one day, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to come hang out with like me and my friend?"
Mhm.
You're gonna probably assume that their friend is also super cool and nice.
Yeah.
Because like, why would this super nice cool person hang out with someone who wasn't
Exactly.
super cool and
Yeah.
nice? So just by him being himself, he doesn't even have to interfere very much in creating a better environment for
Yeah.
her.
I like the idea of not that it would have worked, but like going up to these kids and trying to play with them. Like, of course, it has so many other added layers, but that was nowhere even close to a radar on like for Amelia's perspective, right? She is like she is so happy that a conversation lasted a bit longer with just the shopkeep owner, you know?
And maybe next time she can ask about the weather.
Yeah, and like she's making her steps, but Subaru's offering literally another world's perspective. And it's cool that I think she can learn from him in terms of trying to be a leader or trying to get people to change the way that they're thinking about somebody who looks like Amelia, you know?
In a respectful way.
Yeah.
Because he learns that at the very end of season 1, where he realizes in his last attempt to plead to the village, where he brings up like, "Hey, what's important right now is saving your lives. How you feel, me trying to change your mind right now, that would just be self-service to me in this moment. But we need to focus on like saving your lives. That's the most important thing right now. It's just everyone living. And then we can go on to maybe discuss things further once we're all alive and well.
Yeah, and I think that like that's one of the main things that Subaru has and will continue to offer that's most powerful and precious to Amelia is like his ability to look at things differently and have ideas through learned experiences that will bring everybody together but also bring their favor, like make their favor more positive towards you.
I think both characters have had to have some level of acceptance that not everyone is going to like you and not everyone is going to agree with you and not everyone is going to share the same opinions.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think both of these characters have had to learn that. And in specifically about the topic of Amelia, the half-elf and the witch.
Yep.
It's through her that both of these characters have had to deal with that awful, uncomfortable feeling that not everyone is going to like you and not everyone's going to agree with you.
I also, like, starting this out, I was like, when is this, right? Like, because I imagine Amelia can live for a long time.
Yeah.
And we obviously didn't even see Roswaal meeting her at the beginning or at the end of this, right? Which is also a big question mark. When does that happen? How does it happen? What are, you know?
I feel like what we get in this OVA is the first instance that anyone else knew of her location and her existence. That is what we get. Obviously, Roswaal had to hear it from someone. So it would definitely take place sometime after this encounter. Not sure exactly how long after this encounter, but I feel like Puck has this energy to him toward the end of this OVA where he does bring up Amelia moving soon.
Yeah.
So I think it's Puck's understanding that they're only going to have more and more issues and people coming in and possibly even threatening the village in order to come in and find her or capture her.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be soon after what we see that Roswaal is going to come in.
It's so interesting how different it like her conditions living wise are to when we wake up in the mansion and then see that, you know? It's like I
thought it suited her. I thought that like kind of royal living in a manor and these cute outfits and having the two maids, you know, I thought it suited her really well, but like to see I'm like, can we go back to the little like elven forest? That was so cute.
It is very cute, but I'm also very happy for her that she has people now, you know, and she's talking to people. But I want to see
eat more than cashews.
I want to see her like interactions with Roswaal right when they first met, and I hope we do. I want to see what made them confident that she would have been a candidate, you know. I want to see what drove Roswaal to want to defeat this thing, you know? Like
I believe that we could eventually get more of an explanation of why about each of the candidates.
Yeah.
Like why these specific people, maybe lures to them finding out individually that this was something that they could do or were being chosen for or being supported for. We know for Felt how it happened. We know the origin of Felt suddenly becoming a candidate because we saw it. And
do you think it was something similar?
I mean, it sounds like Roswaal just kind of came into the forest and was like, hey, I pick you, come with me. So kidnapped, kind of like Felt.
I mean, in the sense that, like, she accidentally touches a candidate's stone, you know, and, like, it glows, or I don't know.
I could see Roswaal seems like the type that, like, whether he has a crystal ball or one of his friends does, he was like, I'm just gonna go in here and maybe just, like, let her touch the thing and see. Like, he's just like, I don't know. I don't even know if he would have had a complete clue that she would have actually been a candidate.
When we first saw these, like, shiny stones being created out of blood, I was like, oh my god, are all the shiny stones in, like, tree trunks, like, is that all from, like, devastation or, like, death, you know?
That the ones that she uses to pay?
Yeah. I like that Puck was like, you can't, like, get used too many. It's gonna lower the value of them.
Which he is that was smart of him.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
There are a couple of really good lines that stood out to me. Like, soft heart is that, like, saying that
It was like a
having a soft,
disease.
yeah, it's a deadly disease. Also, one of my favorite lines in the entire OVA, I think, was when Puck was like, "Do you think the cheap, like a cheap concept like that, like fate, like in reference to when he was fighting back, like is that enough to deter
That's
him?"
hilarious. Just
Yeah,
that line alone, like I feel like that is breaking the walls. I
yeah.
don't know, is it for a book or a manga? Would it be a fourth wall, or is that just in like
I think it
theater
is,
and
right?
movies?
I think it's still
Yeah,
there.
yeah, okay. So there's the walls are still there. That feels like
Yeah.
a breaking the fourth wall, and it's kind of like it's a cheap trick to use things such as fate in your
Yeah.
writing and
Yeah.
to like lean so heavily on
That
them.
being said, I that definitely goes into fuck it. Like let's just talk about it now. About like I think it's a great segue to the idea of a witch because where like in one thought it could be like oh that like breaking the fourth wall type thing, but in another I believe it. Like I believe that it is fate to some extent in this world. So what I'm just gonna start talking and just cut me off whenever to tell me if you like if I'm way off base or not. The idea that Amelia was frozen and was breaking out of that, whether it was or was not to do with Puck breaking her out, and then the way that it was portrayed of how long it's been, and Puck having this long period of sadness and not happiness, and that awakening by seeing Amelia again with the oath that was repeated a few times during the OVA. It almost seems like it's like it seems like her being put into ice was one wall being built in an attempt to make the idea of the witch no longer feasible. Then it seems like the oath put into place about the lack of contact between her and Puck was another wall being built that made it so that this fated witch returning could not be built. And it seemed like throughout the movie, both of those walls were knocked down. It seems like things are once again, like maybe they happened before with Satella and like the legend, that things were put into place to avoid this happening, but things are going that way and going forward to inevitably make Amelia into a witch, even though
We
that she said I won't become a witch.
we get this idea from the mediator that comes that this has happened
Meliquera.
countless of times. We do get a line that is like that, either like countless times or
Yeah.
something like that. And it gives the impression possibly to the viewer that, I mean, if you think about it, if you were treated the way that Amelia is treated, with no memory or no knowledge of why you were treated this way, other than finding out that it's just because of how you look or maybe the content of your blood, like you might turn into an evil, vengeful witch.
Yeah.
A witch of envy. You'd be envious that everyone else was treated differently than you.
Yep.
Why is she like why is she the one that has to die because of these things?
Yeah.
When she's done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And so that witch of envy, that word alone could evoke those feelings of why am I being punished when everyone else gets to do. Puck has a line that's like, why can't she do the things that everyone else gets to do?
Exactly.
Like he's like, you're saying these things, but that's what everyone else is doing.
Uh-huh.
But you're gonna punish her for it.
Yeah, and he's like, that's just the way it is.
And so what if it's just a repetition that the world made the witch?
Yeah. But that being said, it does almost feel like a checklist is being gone through of like,
That's what
okay,
I'm
it's
saying.
happening. And I know that everything we have seen is like Amelia's not that type of person, right? Puck's not that type of person or spirit. It shouldn't happen. But I wonder if things were exactly the same in previous iterations of the witch currently, and then things continue to spiral and snowball, and it ends up leading to it. Which, no pun intended, like if that's how it goes, right? And if that like idea of that repetition and cycle continues, I have two thoughts in regards to Subaru here. Is Subaru's being here an attempt to throw something so drastically different into this world and into Amelia's life, that it could be the one thing missing, or the one thing that needed to change or needed to happen so that that path doesn't go down
That would
the
definitely
same.
fit. So I know we talked about it at the very end of season one, where I was starting to really get on board with the idea that the witch bringing Subaru might be for the betterment of Amelia and the world and not necessarily to bring destruction. It seemed like that was just possible that the witch's motives weren't what I had at first in the series perceived them as being, more twisted or evil. The times that we dealt with Betelgeuse at the very end of season one really was driving home that feeling for me that maybe what was written in the gospel wasn't exactly the intentions and desires of Satella, and that Subaru is such a wild card. And if we're trying to break against fate and bringing in something that doesn't even exist in this world ever before, and
Yeah.
has an element of a superpower, if you will, that has never existed in this world before,
Yeah.
you can definitely change fate with that.
Say that Amelia is a reincarnation of the witch and is a vessel. Say that Amelia is able to remember or have the memories of all of her previous iterations. Wouldn't she be pretty close to a same structure of a character as Subaru currently is?
Yeah.
Like, the idea of multiple iterations of life and rebirth and reliving is literally the power Subaru has by using Return by Death.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if that is the
it's
case,
like a play on reincarnation.
Yeah, like, but it's almost like, granted, Subaru doesn't have to deal with the hair color and the ears. He is being built up to be something very similar to like what the witch.
He was thrown into this world as something that could so easily be ostracized.
Yeah.
You are wearing weird clothes we've never seen before. You don't know anything about this world. You have a scary looking face. Like, the trustworthiness of Subaru and what people would first see when they look at him. Like, he already is on a similar foot to the immediate kind of suspicion people would have upon looking at Amelia.
Yeah.
They're like, you're not dressed like you're from here. You don't know anything. Your face is weird. Like,
it's interesting though, right? Like how you can see, like, again, if it is the case of like the witch being reincarnated and this thing happening like over and over again, and it's a constant cycle. It's interesting how you can compare that so easily to Subaru and his abilities, you know?
I also feel like there's similarities on an emotional level to what we get with Subaru and Amelia, specifically in this episode when she is finding out that she is a half-elf and what that means and who people think that she is, and she's really, really confronted with it. And just that, like, pleading, that crying, like, I didn't ask for any of this. Why is this happening to me? What have I done to you? Like, those feelings and that pain and that just, like, uncomfortable, frustrated feeling is so similar to when we first are at the mansion, the manor, and we are being killed by Rem over and over and over again. And we get Subaru in the woods, on the ground, basically broken. Like, what have I done? Like, why are you doing this to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this to me? Why? That same feeling.
Is
just by existing, because he was born, because he was brought into this world, because she was born, that is why people are acting the way they are toward them.
Is Rem Subaru's Puck? Like, imagine that whole interaction with the birds appearing happening, but at the end of that conversation, Subaru's like, Mommy?
I would say at this point, yeah, I would say Rem went from being Subaru's, whatever his name is, the mediator. It started with the M name that was difficult.
Meliquera.
Meliquera. First, Rem was Meliquera to Subaru, and now Rem is Puck to Subaru.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
that is fair.
Okay. Speaking of Puck, he got real big.
He did get big.
Imagine watching this before we see the mansion scene. Like of him bursting through the mansion and we always see the silhouette. Like
I liked the unknown.
Me too.
Like the
I did too.
unknowing of what that was. But like we also had an inkling and a clue because of the voice mainly. I think it was the voice that sold it for us. So like, that's Puck's voice.
Definitely.
And the "my daughter" line there, I think that the choice to see it in the order that we have, I appreciate that choice.
Big boy Puck is scary and cute at the same time.
I love him, except for the fact that he's like literally destruction.
Yeah. I mean, but bringing up like the term like father, it does make you wonder who Amelia's father is or like mother is. Like what half elf? I imagine it being the dad is not the elf because of where Puck is in the situation. I'm like narratively, I imagine her father being the one who is the other half.
I could see it being like her mother was in this little elven forest with all those other elves, and then maybe her dad was from that village or something, and then they weren't supposed to get together and they did, which would already make her a child that is cast out or not necessarily loved very well by the group of people.
Yeah.
And then something happened. She caused something to happen. The power within her caused something to happen. And hopefully someday that ice will melt.
Do you think we're ever going to go back to the statues in like seasons?
Oh gosh. That is such a big question.
Like, can't you imagine
Would
us
they?
going there and then Subaru like gets to see like this dusty old home that was Amelia's?
So the issue with that is they've brought up something that is actually so heavy if you actually think about it. Like those are all people in there that are frozen.
Yeah.
Do we have to clear that up at some point? We have to save those people at some point, right? Question mark. Like to be given that, but then to never ever talk about it again.
Exactly.
Might feel really uncomfortable.
Especially with the ending of the OVA being like there isn't ice that doesn't melt, you know, like.
And just to think about, you wouldn't want those people to get forgotten.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't we continuously be trying to think of a way to cure them or fix them? It's definitely different frozen alive than what happens every time Subaru tries to get into the manor at first when we're dealing with a big Puck, like during that time period. Everyone was frozen, but more so not to the point where they'd be alive inside. It was more like I could break your fingers off.
Yeah. One of Puck's moments in the movie, it was almost like he was stopping this dude's heart, which fuck the perverts. That sucked. I can't believe Mela Quera would even use one of them. But
that spirit just I mean, he was meant to be super frustrating to us because of that idea that he was like, I am the judger of criminals, but he was doing criminal acts. He was hurting nature. He was framing her.
But it's for fate, right? He reminds me of a Pokemon.
Yeah,
you know,
not honestly in the way of
Dialga.
I mean, there were a few. There was Ponyta. There was Muck. You know, like we saw a few Pokemon in this episode.
That's true.
That's fair.
That is true.
He was acting. Yes, I would agree with that.
Who's the Pokemon that like created everything? It wasn't Dialga. It wasn't Deoxys. It wasn't. It maybe starts Arceus. Arceus, maybe.
Was like
is he the creator of everybody, the world?
I think universe? I knew at one point in time, and now I do not know.
I want to watch Pokemon.
The new one.
The new one.
Oh yeah,
the Ash's story ended, and this is a character who might be his daughter as one of the MCs, right?
I have not heard anything about the might be his daughter.
There was a film theory about it on YouTube.
There was a film theory on YouTube?
Yeah. I think they decided I
want it to be his daughter?
Well, they went through like all like the genetic possibilities for every like romantic partner Ash could have in the series, and they came down with a few options like Dawn looked like a pretty good contestant, but I'm pretty sure they settled on the fact that it wasn't going to be Ash's.
Okay. I was gonna say, who's the mom? Mr. Mime? Just like following in his mom's footsteps? That's his dad, right? Mr. Mime?
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.